Well, good morning. Grace and peace to each one. It's been wonderful to be here already. Yeah, God is good, and God works. So, I'd like to talk this morning about, it'll be, I guess, probably the second to last of the Beatitudes. Matthew 5, verse 8. So, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So it says here that the blessed are the pure in heart, because they're the ones that are going to see God. I'd like to kind of break this up into two parts probably. So we'll look at kind of the thing of purity of heart. What does that mean? What does it mean to be pure in heart? What does it mean to have a pure heart? And then lastly, kind of what does it mean to see God? What does it mean that people with a pure heart will see God? And yeah, we'll be relying on Scripture and what God has said to try to figure out, kind of wrap our minds around what it means for the pure in heart to see God. Okay, so there's a similar verse, or a verse I think that brings out something similar, and we've recently gone through that in our Sunday school, the adult Sunday school. Hebrews 12, verse 14 says, "Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord." I think this word holiness actually has a lot in common with the word pure in heart. So I would understand that they're very similar. And for some reason, I don't know, I think this was one of the Beatitudes that I maybe had the most fear of preaching about, this idea of purity of heart. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I guess when you think about like a message of holiness or of purity, what does it kind of bring up in your mind? I don't know, maybe I'm different, but it feels like a lot of times when we talk about this thing of holiness or being pure, it kind of has a connotation of maybe a certain amount of condemnation, right? Because I think we sense that we are not perfect, we are not holy like God maybe, right? In comparison to God, we have a lot to grow, and we feel like we don't measure up. And so, I don't know, maybe I feel that's obviously the wrong way to look at holiness, except for the fact that it is true that measured against God, we are not holy, and we can't expect to be maybe perfect in that sense. But yet God calls us to holiness, and He calls us to be pure in heart. So what does this mean? I guess now for some maybe definitions would help us a little bit of, so what do we mean by pure? And I like what the Oxford Dictionary had to say. One definition is simply freedom from adulteration or contamination. So that's the idea of purity, right? So that's something that is pure. Another word that the Greek word is actually translated into clean in a lot of places in the New Testament. So purity or the thing of cleanness, something being clean, and simply not having contamination. So something that is clean, right? So this water is fairly clean, right? It's clear and it's free of contamination. maybe until you put it under a microscope. So, and I'd actually like to use water as an illustration of I think what this can mean for us. So, any of us that like to be in the mountains or do hiking and getting way back in, so kind of the blessing of clean, pure water. So if you're hiking in the mountains and you're tired and you're thirsty, there's usually not a lot of water around. It's kind of limited. You have to go find it unless you've taken it along. But these streams that come out of the mountains it's the best water that you could ever have. It's clear and it's clean. And so if you find this stream, this clear water, at least our family, we grew up just drinking out of the streams in the mountains, and especially the further you get back in, there's not much risk of having something in there contaminated, right? Or you won't get sick from it. But it kind of depends where you're at on the stream, right? So if the further downstream you get, the more that you can expect it's going to be contaminated and have dirt or germs in it, right? So maybe you might question whether upstream, maybe an elk wallowed in the stream and made it muddy, and there's the elk, left his stuff there, and so it could be that water is contaminated, right? There's always that chance. But if you keep going upstream, and if you get far enough upstream that you get to the source, that water coming out, it's clear and it's as clean as water is ever going to be. And I feel that's kind of how we are as people. So we've been told, the Bible tells us that when God made us in his image, right, there was no contamination. And everything, we were clean, and we were the way that we were supposed to be, right? Just like clean water. But as as with water, there's always outside influences, right? That influence and have the potential to contaminate us. And we would see that in Romans 8, verse 20. I'd like to read that verse as we try to understand what does it mean to be pure, and what's the opposite of that, contamination or sin. So Romans 8, verse 20, for the creature, I'm going to back up to 19. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. So something ahead, right? Something is coming that we are expecting. It says, for the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So we understand that the original product, right, of humans was completely good and clean. But it says that the creature was made subject to vanity. I actually heard recently, and this is kind of a shocker maybe, but God made something and then he lost control of that something, right? He lost control of his creation. So maybe in a sense, right, he actually wanted it to be that way. He wanted the creature to be able to fall. It seems like he gave man that choice of choosing him or not. And so he was made subject to vanity or to vainness or to, this word vanity has the idea of inutility or futility. So we were made with a choice to be futile and to be unuseful for God. So God actually, we believe that everything is still in God's control, right? Everything in the end is in God's control, under God's control. So he hasn't lost control, but he allowed his creation to be tampered with. And in that sense, he really lost control of, or he gave control to us as his creation. Okay, so then just like that water coming down the stream is the further it gets, the more contamination that it's possible that it will meet up with, and by the time it gets down to our water reservoirs or wherever our water comes from for our tap water, it has the need to be purified, right? That water, they can't just put it into our pipes and let it come to us. It goes through a process of becoming clean again, right? And they put things in it to clean it up. But it didn't used to be that way. So I guess I would like to kind of think about holiness and purity in kind of in that light of, we shouldn't think of it as something strange. I think a lot of times we look around us and we see all the pollution around us, and it seems normal, right? So we see, as we go out into the world, we're confronted with just a lot of evil and wickedness, and that evil has the ability, or we have the ability to be contaminated by that evil. And all of us have been contaminated by that evil. There's none of us that haven't been affected. But through Christ, we know the answer to that, obviously. So we've been made subject to inutility or futility. I had to think as well, so when we have a baby born, when Ashton was born just over a year ago, when that baby is born and you first hold that baby, they usually come out screaming and they're, physically filthy, right? But there's really nothing about that baby that that baby has not been contaminated, if you will, with the things of the world. And even though Ashton, he starts out crying and just really confused about what's happening, comes out crying, and I don't blame Ashton for crying, right? I don't say that it's because he's a sinner. He was born a sinner that he's crying. But he was just really pure. But give it a year's time, and you can already start to see the effects of outside influences affecting Ashton. And even though we believe he's innocent before God, right? But Ashton, you'll see him around the house. He has these kind of outside influences, like we all do, things that happen to Ashton. And whether it's us as parents, like speaking into his life, trying to get him to do or to not do something. And we already see that he has that ability he already has the ability to be angry, right? And he has the ability to disobey. And so even, with anybody, as the further they get down the stream, like the water, the more those outside influences really have the ability to contaminate our lives. And the reason for that is that we have the sin nature. We know that it's not just the outside influences, right? It's because we have that nature to want what we want. That's the reason that Ashton gets mad, is because he already has an idea of what he wants, and if I try to tell him one thing and he doesn't want that, he can he can throw a fit, right? So that's just a little illustration of the further we get down the creek, the more that we start to react to the things around us, and the contaminations of the world begin to affect us. Second Timothy 2, verse 21. Okay, so this is kind of at the end of a list of things that the reader was not supposed to do. It says, but in a great house there, I'm going to start in verse 20, but in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and earth, and some to honor, and some to dishonor. If a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. And then verse 22, flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart. We're going to stop there. So it says that those that have a pure heart follow righteousness, faith, charity or love, and peace. So these are the things that come out of a pure heart. And back to verse 21, if a man purge himself from these. So you have to get rid of something in order to have a pure heart. And I think we would understand that we get rid of the effects or the influences that have contaminated us up to this point. So this is kind of wrapping up what it means to have a pure heart or to live in holiness. So I like to think of these two things as being really the original state of being. So if we can kind of think of purity and holiness kind of in those senses, I think it takes away some of the maybe the dread that tends to come with these words. And when we're contaminated, obviously there is dread when we talk about holiness, right? And looking around at the world, I think we just naturally, if we kind of go by majority, right, purity and holiness are hardly to be found as we look around us, right? But that doesn't make it any less true. That doesn't make God's way any less right. Just because we're in the minority as a Christian looking for purity and holiness, it just means that we as a society and culture, as a world, are pretty far from the original state of humans, right? But God made us perfect, and He made us in His image, and He made us with the right desires, and we were subjected to this thing of futility. So I think we'll put another illustration on the board, and I'll need your help. So what are some things that could contaminate us? What are the things that we're talking about? Like, can we make it practical? Is there anything that coming down the stream of life, so with water, if it's coming down, it's going to gets muddy, right? So dirt, and maybe there's an oil spill, and there's oil mixed in with the water, or you name it. There's so many contaminants on the way down from the Juventus, right, for that water, by the time it gets here, it's really dirty. So what are the things that really contaminate our heart? What are the things that take us from the original state to the state that mankind is in at this point? Help me out.
Sunday school lesson we talked about discontent, where it was the opposite, said that we would be content.
Content? Okay, so discontentment. All right, anything else? Lust. Lust. Pride. Anything else?
Resentment.
Resentment. Okay. Was that selfishness? Okay.
Comparison.
All right, comparison. So just think the works of the flesh. Works of the flesh are manifest, which are these. Think of any others? Anger? Yeah, anger.
Jesus gives a list in Matthew 15. He says, evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness,
All right, we have too many to put up here, probably. So evil thoughts. We'll put adultery down here. I heard that one. I think we'll stop with that, but we get the idea of the things that tend to contaminate the water, right? The water of our hearts. So again, in 2 Timothy, it tells us, if a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. And I think that kind of, in my mind, this verse really encapsulates like what my desire is as a Christian, right? I think all of us want to be useful, and we want our life to matter, and we want good things to come out of our lives, right? We want to be a good influence on other people, and the list could go on and on. I guess one word that stands out that I think is somewhat general here in this list is the word lust. So, and I think a lot of times when we think of lust, we have this idea of lust being sexual, that sexual lust, right? So the inordinate affection, and it definitely includes that. But that word lust actually, it can actually be part of a lot of these, I think, and it can cause us to do a lot of other things. So the lust is really just it's another way of saying a desire for something that isn't yours, right? Or that isn't right. And so that word lust is really, I think, really all encompassing. It's the reason for a lot of sin, I feel, is just that desire for something that doesn't belong to you, and that can be in a sexual way, or that can be it can talk about any part of our life. We can lust for things that we shouldn't have. Another way of putting it would be that lust is longing for something that is not according to God's design. And Jesus told us that really that all the law hangs on, was it 2 commandments? The commandment to love God and then to love our neighbor. And yeah, the golden rule that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. So if we kind of think of even some of these things as it relates to other people in our relationships, really the original is us getting along, right? And us not hurting somebody else, right? If I commit adultery, it hurts my wife, and if I'm angry, it could hurt any one of you. Pride and discontent, selfishness, all of those things, it really affects other people. And so really God's law really kind of boiled down is that normal state of being that we treat each other the way that we want to be treated. Yeah, so I think we'll leave that. So that kind of sums up maybe what it means to be pure in heart. And I think this word purity also has the idea of singleness, right? I think my wife actually brought that out this morning, that purity is something really singular, right? It's something that so with water, if it's pure water, then it's by itself, right? It has nothing else in it. And so if we have a heart for God and only for God, if that's really what our heart is, then we have a pure heart. And it's a singularity of focus and of worship, I think. So I think we come to maybe the harder part now, is seeing God. What have you ever seen God, or do you know anybody that's ever seen God? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we can see God through knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely probably a big part of this verse. I really, to be honest, I struggled with this idea of seeing God because of what we see in the scripture. Nobody has ever seen God, it says. But yet, as we have faith in God, like Dad said, we do see, we can behold God, right? We can start to see God. So we'll just start out. Let's read Exodus 33, verse 20. Okay, so here we have Moses conversing with God, and I guess Moses wanted to see God. In verse 18, he said, "I beseech thee, show me thy glory." In verse 19, he said, this is God speaking, "I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee, and will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy to whom I will show mercy." And he said, "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live." So, and I think this is because God is so outside of, God is so separate from man in a sense, right? That a mere mortal man cannot see God and live, cannot actually see God with his physical eyes and live. "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live." And yeah, and we see, I think he said that he could see his backside. He could see him from the back, but not his face. So be that as it may, we're going to keep moving here. John 1:18. So again, confirming that nobody has ever seen God. John 1:18, "No man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him." So Jesus has declared to us who God is. So he has, in a sense, demonstrated to us who God is. Well, if we want another twist on it, let's read John 1:1, the same chapter here. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Okay, so Jesus, as we understand this word, that the Word means, right, this is God. So the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. So here we have Jesus creating the world. So, have we seen God or have we not? So in the person of Jesus, did we see God? If Jesus is God, did we see God? I don't think I'm going to be able to answer all the questions kind of surrounding this, but I feel we can kind of get maybe a general idea of what it means to see God. John 14, 6-11. Jesus saith unto him, so this was speaking to Thomas. Thomas's question, we don't know where you're going, and how do we know the way? Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. If ye had known me, ye should have known my Father also, and from henceforth ye know him and have seen him. Okay, so Jesus really equaling himself with God, right? He's saying that if you've seen me, you've as good as seen the Father, right? Philip saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. Jesus saith unto him, have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. And how sayest thou, then, show us the Father? Believest not thou that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? And the words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very work's sake. Okay, so here we have Jesus saying that if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So there's at least some sense of Jesus, in seeing Jesus, that people would have seen God. But I think there's still there's another sense that this is still, like, people still have not seen God. And yeah, some of this stuff, I don't know how to explain, how all this works together, because Jesus is God. But yet, I think it points to something else. We see something else that is not a reality yet, and that is people seeing God. 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. So here again, Paul saw Jesus, right? On the road to Damascus, he saw Jesus. But Paul, even in seeing Jesus, he said, we see it through a glass darkly, but then, so he's looking to something in the future. There's something coming. There's something yet to come that we don't have yet. And he says, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. So this I think speaks to the future, when we can be in God's presence and actually be known, or we will know. It says just as we are known. So just like God knows us, we will know God. So there's another verse that I think kind of explains this. 1 John 3, verse 2. We're going to read 1 and 2. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when we shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Okay, so again, the idea that we haven't seen God yet as he is. We haven't seen the full expression of who the Father is. But it says that we shall know him. It doth not yet appear what we shall be, and I think we probably all agree with that idea, right? We don't really know what the future holds, and we don't know what it would be like to be in the presence of God. How does that? We have no idea of what it actually means to be in the very physical presence of God. But he says, when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So I think this has the idea of we've taken on the new body, right? We've taken on the spiritual body to be in a position of seeing God. It says, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So all this, I guess, to say that there's a fuller revelation of God coming. And even though we know God, right, we know God through Christ, and we know Christ, there's still something of, there's still, I guess, a lot of question and a lot of mystery around this thing of seeing God. So there's a fuller revelation coming. Revelation 1:7. I should have read this earlier. This is an interesting verse. I thought of it when I was like wrestling through this idea of of seeing God and who will see God. Revelation 1:7 says, Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. So here again we have, there has to be, there's a certain amount of difference in seeing God through Christ and seeing God the Father, I guess. Because it says here that every eye is going to see him. There's no eye that won't see Jesus when he comes back, when he returns. But only the pure in heart will see God. So that's what we have to look forward to. As long as our hearts are pure and we live in holiness, if, like Titus said, or Timothy said, we get rid of these influences that have corrupted us, if we can get rid of the corruption of the flesh and walk with God, then we have that promise of seeing God. Okay, so let's go to Psalm 15. We're going to go to the Psalms because it seems like the verse that Jesus, or the verse about the pure in heart seeing God, it seems like it harks back to something that David said. Psalm 15:2. So this is kind of wrapping up the pure in heart seeing God. This is a short psalm. I think we'll read the whole thing. The caption on my Bible is, Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor. So verse 3 again talks about the works of the flesh, right? In whose eyes a vile person is contemned, but he honoreth them that fear the Lord. He that sweareth to his own hurt and changeth not. He that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent. He that doeth these things shall never be moved. Who shall abide in thy tabernacle? So who is it? Who is it that is able to come into God's presence, right? And I think this is definitely, I think we could look at it as somewhat progressive, right? So we have the ability, even now, as Christians, and the further up the stream we get, right, the purer the water is, the more that I think we understand God, and we can actually see God in our daily lives. Who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly, worketh righteousness, and speaketh the truth in his heart. So these are things, these things describe the condition of a person, right, before, like, out, kind of separate from sin, right? So a person in his original state does these kinds of things. And we're translated back to that original state through Christ, right? He gives us that standing with God. Psalm 24. We're going to start in verse 3. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Selah. Verse 7, lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory. Selah. Okay, so who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? And verse 4 has the answer. He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted his soul unto vanity. So this word vanity again has the idea of falsehood, right? Or brokenness, sin. Really, everything that is in the world through lust, right? So this thing of vanity, he who has not lifted up his soul into vanity. Or another way of saying it is that water that is uncontaminated with the things around, or that is around it, right? And this, I think we would all agree that this takes the grace of God. How can we, as people with that, born with that sin nature, how do we come to the place of really being pure and in our original state? It's only by the grace of God, and we know that we'll never be, free from temptation or free from the ability to fall. And yeah, there's always that ability for us, but then face to face, he says that we will know even as we are known. 1 Thessalonians 4, 3 and 4. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that you should abstain from fornication, that everyone should know how to possess his vessel in sanctification and honor. So the will of God is our sanctification, and that word has the idea of purification, right? So this is something that, and I think in my mind, the more sanctified we are as a people or as an individual, the more that we will see God. He reveals himself, I think, to the pure in heart. And the more sanctified we are, I think the clearer we can see who is God. There's a natural process of purifying the water, right? We have our natural water cycle. And like I said before, so the water that we drink is probably coming from up in the Uintas somewhere, and it starts out completely pure and clean. There's nothing wrong with it. We would love to drink that water. I was thinking if we would take a pipe and go to the source up in the Uintas and bring a pipe down into our house, that would be amazing, right? It would be pure water. One more verse, Revelations 22. This, I think, kind of ties water to Jesus. So Jesus, he said he's the source of life, right? And he gives living water. See if I can find the verse. Verse 1, Revelations 22, verse 1, he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. So just a beautiful, that perfect clear water that we're talking about, that we find in the Uintas, even clearer than that probably. It says clear as crystal, so just perfect water flowing out of God's throne. So I guess what's God's answer to, like, how does he bring about purification, or how does he put us back into the original state that we were in? And so the natural water cycle, I was going to say something about that. So if, I think there's some kind of a reservoir up in the mountains probably where the water collects. They collect the water, and then they have to purify that water, right? So they probably put chlorine and who knows what all in that to try to make it actually where it doesn't hurt us. But that's really kind of man's way of trying to purify, right? But God has his own natural process to actually purify that water. And that water, when it comes down into the lake, then the heat makes it evaporate and goes up into the clouds, and then eventually that cloud dumps the water again in the mountains. And that to me is a picture of what God can do with our lives as well. So we can, like, the water is evaporated and it leaves the trash behind, right? And it's clean again, and it starts out in the Uintas again, and it comes, starts the whole process again. So God can also purify us, and he has that sanctification is his way through Christ. The blood of Christ cleanses us from all sin. So that's God's answer to purify us. So I guess kind of as we think about moving forward and being a people that will see God, I think we could say that we desire to see God this week, right? With kind of the plans that we have for prayer and fasting. We want to see God. We want him to show us himself. And we want direction to move forward. Well, probably the best way to see God and to hear from God is to be, as much as we can, right, in that position of having that pure heart. Let's check our hearts and make sure that we are pure and in that position of seeing God. I think that's all I have. We'll turn the time back to Luke.